The number one thing that, you know, kills relationships, it kills sports teams. It's communication. It's communication, right? And it sounds basic and it's called a soft skill, but it's anything but soft. The way to get your team into the zone is to master the art of communication. How to open up rooms where you're able to have what I call an elephant in the room conversation, where you can just say, "Hey, like this is an elephant in the room conversation." So it takes off the awkwardness. You're like, "Okay, yep, I accept that. What's on your heart?"
Hello, everyone. Welcome to LED. This is Ed McGill, host of the podcast LED Leadership with Ed, also co-founder and partner of McGill Jungie Wealth Management, where I've been on this, 40 plus year journey on leadership, what it means, and then also how to just impact some of that wisdom on others that are listening. And for those of you out there that join us on either Spotify, Apple Music, or YouTube. Just thank you for joining. Make sure you like, comment, share, do all those things that they ask you to do if you're finding value in the content. And then every other Wednesday, bright and early, new episodes drop. So looking forward to having joined this. And we're really fortunate, going to have some fun today. We're welcoming David Nurse, who I did not know this, but he is a former Guinness Book of World Record holder for most three-pointers in 1 minute. It's since been broke, but we'll hear about that. He worked as the Brooklyn Nets shooting coach, worked with over 150 NBA players before becoming a best-selling author. We see a couple of his books in the background there, Pivot and Go, and then my favorite, Do It, which also says Don't Quit in there. So we'll talk a little bit about what those are. And then really, when you think about it, just the top mindset authority of how to get in the flow state, which we're going to spend time on. So, David, welcome to LED, Leadership with Ed. Great to have you on, my friend.
And it's an honor to be here. My first question is, who broke that record? I didn't know it was broken. I still consider myself the world record holder. What's going on here?
It does not show it, but Jen, my EA, who does
Oh,
all the research beforehand, found that, and then
wow.
she said past record holder. So who
Oh,
told you that
no.
there even was a record for that? I think there's records for everything in the Guinness book, but
Well, you know what? Let's go vulnerable from the start here, Ed. We'll hit them with an uppercut from the start. So when I was, trying to get into the NBA as a coach, I had this playing career, which, yeah, I played professionally overseas, but it was more like Will Ferrell, semi-pro, than it was real NBA. And, I realized my 2-inch vertical leap and being 6'2", NBA probably wasn't for me, but I
yep.
wanted to get in, so I wanted to coach. And all I could do was shoot. Like defense wasn't interested, athleticism, not my gift, but I could shoot it. So, I'm like, I'm going to make myself the best shooting coach that I can be, train NBA players, and then the NBA will come calling. So I was like, hey, what is the record for most three-pointers in a minute with one basketball? And it was up on YouTube and it was like 18. And, I was like, I can do that. I can beat that. So I did. I beat that. And then I did a one basketball in 5 minutes. So I set that record. But here's the thing, it was never, Guinness was not in the gym. So I put it on YouTube. I put Guinness World Record holder. He's like, there's nothing out there, so it's got to be me, right? It was really funny, man, because it caught on like that. And then this was only like 3 years ago. So a long time after I did this, I get an email from Guinness. And they're like, hey, your record isn't official. We've been hearing people say this. Like, we're going to have to actually film this thing to make it real. To me, it was like, that's all I need to know. Like, they came calling after me. So, yeah, that's probably why she found it like it's not an official Guinness. So I'll admit it, I'm not an official world record holder, but in my own mind, I am.
In your own mind, you were, and if you say it and believe it, we're going to be talking about confidence. So that's
Oh,
probably a good,
there you go.
a good lead in on that. And it's interesting. People do know you from your time in the NBA, coaching, and then the players that you coach. But if we think about this in a controlled, larger environment, to study something bigger, the flow, the pressure, the confidence, that comes under scrutiny. And you talk about confidence and also it not being the scoreboard, not by how many accolades, how many wins and losses, but, really kind of more this inner state. But if you weren't had not done the stuff with the Nets,
Mhm.
weren't around all these professional basketball players and celebrities and different things, what would your world look like? What would you have done, or how would you have thought about flow state if that wasn't what kind of shaped you early on?
That's such a good question. I have thought of this a lot too. If NBA, if basketball wasn't the vehicle and the pursuit, I am just a nut for learning and being around people that are doing really cool things. And it's kind of what I'm doing now with the interviews of people that are considered the flow state experts in different fields. Like I made coffee with the number one coffee barista in the United States. I played the violin with the top violinist in the world. I climbed with Alex Honnold at his house in Vegas, the guy who just scaled that
Did you
Netflix.
really? When did you
Yeah,
do that?
yeah, last year. Last year, he's like, yeah, totally. Let's chat about flow state. Come out here and climb. Man, it was fascinating. This guy is the best guy. So we interview for like, 30, 40 minutes. And there were some pretty cool things in the interview that we can talk about. But then we just climbed on his climbing wall for like 5 hours. Like he just loves climbing.
Climbing. Yeah.
But that comes back to your point of
Hmm.
he wasn't doing any of this for external validation or external applause. Now think about that. As you're listening to this and you go into your day, are you doing this for, other people to say, "Oh, how great you are," or "Oh, how many followers you have," or "Oh, how much the results," right? He just had an inner flame. Like his inner flame burnt so hot of he just loved climbing. And it was probably like 10, 12 times where he just said, man, I just love doing the thing. Like I just love doing the thing. Like he just kept saying it. Like, I never expected to be famous. I never expected to make money doing this. I just loved climbing. And that pureness I've seen in all of these people. The coffee barista. I'm going to ski actually with this guy Jim Morrison. He's the only person to ever ski down Mount Everest. It's wild. Like it's not even humanly supposed to be possible to ski
Possible.
with the altitude. And he was telling me this story, just briefly of it took him 4 hours to ski down Everest. He's like, at every turn, if I fell, I would die. And I'm just like, dude, what? Aren't you thinking ahead? Like, oh, what about like 2 hours? He's like, nope. I was so locked in. It was just the next turn, the next turn, the next turn. And by the time, I put my head up, I'm down there at the bottom. So I think in what I've seen is the people that have, number one, passion. They have passion for what they do. And I know you might be thinking like, well, I don't get to climb mountains for a living or play basketball. Well, then you find the micro passion, the micro flow within what you do. Is there something within what you're doing? And I think there is for everybody, that can bring joy to somebody else, or you can find maybe it's a little small competition of what you're doing within that. So there's passion, it's personified, you're living it out. You're living it out as, it's oozing out of you. You're in a positive, you're a reflection of the passion that you have for the thing is personified through what you do. And then you do it for a purpose. Alex's purpose, and he talked about this on Netflix after he scaled Taipei. And if you want to have your stomach churn, go watch that.
Watch that.
It's crazy. But quick side note, sorry, is and I was watching it, my wife is just freaking out. She's like, he'll fall. Like, what if he falls? I was like, this dude ain't falling. Like, I've seen this guy. He is not gonna fall. And he was just obviously in his element and in his zone, having fun with it. But yeah, it's with purpose. And his purpose, he's like, people will take this for how they want, but they will find this, me being able to do this, they'll find motivation that they can overcome obstacles, that they can overcome odds. And I think that there's a real beauty in that. So, full circle there, passion, personified with purpose. That's the ultimate living in the flow. And what I would be doing if basketball wasn't involved, it'd be this. I'd be trying to go all over the world and, eating the best food in these crazy countries with, Japanese monks or whatever it might be, and just getting inside their mind.
You know what I think about when you were saying Alex Honnold? Makes me think I have a friend that was in DevGru, and couple things with anyone that's in the special forces, and I'm not saying Alex is special forces, but when you watched him climb, like a lot of the special forces, they're not like overly big, overly muscular, like Alex is obviously his hands and forearms calves have to be tremendously strong. But like if you saw him walking down the street, he would just be like,
Yeah.
anyone else. And the same thing with, for some of the SEALs I've been fortunate enough to meet. But the other thing with one of them, they were talking about the GoPros and the heart monitors that they're wearing, and a doctor just said, when you're outside the house or where they were going into, your heart rates, all of you guys were going crazy. And then once the door opened, it just came down to like your heart was barely beating.
Mm.
And they're like, how can that be? Bullets are flying around. I mean, we're watching the video and, it seems like chaos. And he had just said, that's our safe place. That's our happy space. That's what we were trained to do. And there's no, you're just hyper focused. And it made me think of Alex, for those that end up watching that. He's just talking to people as he climbs. He's talking to the commentators. There's people on the other wind inside having like climb parties. His wife, he met on one of their, and, he's cleaning off his shoes, just having this normal conversation. And as you said that, it made me think of, the SEALs, when they're in that environment, that's where they're probably most comfortable and in a tremendous flow state. Whereas for us, our stomachs are churning.
Yeah, and the reason being, and I'm glad you brought that up. I interviewed a friend of mine, Rich Deviney, who was a Navy SEAL head for 20 years, one of the commanders, and he talked about that. It's like the kill zone, and they knew exactly where everybody on their team is going to be. So what that does is it takes away uncertainty, right? So we look at that as like, how is that possible? But they've had what's called deep practice, which is a higher level of practice. That's the type of practice for flow state development, to be able to tap in it more regularly. If you practice in a state of, it's not just going out there and shooting hoops for 2 hours. That's just practice. But if
Yep.
every shot you analyze, where was your form correct? What was the trajectory? How did you finish a shot? So if you take learning from every single repetition, it's going to intertwine more muscle memory, more myelin in the brain wrapping around, that becomes our processing system, so that when you go into these highly intense, times, if it's a Navy SEAL or you find yourself climbing a Taipei 101,
Or
it,
just a corporate executive that,
yeah,
you're going through
right.
COVID, you're going through a merger and acquisition.
But you've done it before. You've done it
Yep.
so many times that you don't have to think. So it's like, I'll give the example of working with NBA players. I've got one player I've worked with since college, Norm Powell. He's an all-star this year. He's probably one of the, most interesting stories that I've seen of just continued growth year after year after year. He was a second round pick, 3.6% of second round picks even make it 3 years in the NBA, made it to a starter, and now he's an NBA All-Star. And, what I see in him is he's gotten to the point where he's not thinking on the floor. He's not thinking of, hey, how do I make this shot, or what do I do here? He's worked so hard, he's put in so much deep practice, so much work, that now he can just have fun and play free, because what he's done is going to show up. Hope that makes sense. Like if you've given a keynote talk a zillion times, you can go have fun because it's going to be there. You don't have to search in your brain like, where do I go next? What do I say next? You are just able to have fun and play free. And what that term is, it's my favorite one. It's called simplicity on the far side of complexity. Now, I know that makes me sound smart. I'm not that smart. I like cool terms to make me sound smart. So when you start anything, there's this, kind of incompetent confidence. You're just having fun. You're a kid. You're just playing. There's really no rules. You're just, you're free. But then as you climb up the ladder in sports or business or whatever it is, there's much more things you have to think about, things you have to
Yeah.
develop. You have to have a coach. You have to do this. You have to do that. And it's so convoluted in that, in that zone. But as you master it to extreme mastery, that's when it comes back to the simple, where it's just fun and free. And it's wild, but like a lot of the times when I'll talk to NBA players or CEOs, when they're going to step on stage, it's just, hey, have fun, play free. Sounds
See,
basic, but it's the best advice I can have.
and that's probably why those of us that haven't played at that high of a level, if we continue that example, when they're making or shooting free throws, game 6 or game 7, and they're just going through their routine, making them they're calm, on that because it's no different than what they've done literally thousands of times. When as you were saying that too, I was thinking about you said obsession is in life is a good thing, and often in business we hear about this work life balance. When does obsession become destructive, or does it ever? Tell us a little bit about how you view obsession and
Yeah.
why you said that's a good.
I think obsession is a great thing if done correctly. So it's obsession in the flow state, in the zone. And
Okay.
There was a McKinsey study, a 10-year study done on productivity. And when people were in the flow state, it was a 550% increase in productivity. So think about that. If you are obsessed with something and you can tap into this flow state type of productivity, you can do it in a way that doesn't look like everybody else does. When most people think of obsession and work-life balance, it's, hey, I'm going to give up my kids and my family life and my health to pursue X. But that's not how it is. You
Yeah,
can
that's
be
an unhealthy obsession.
That's an unhealthy obsession. A healthy obsession is being able to figure out what your rhythms are, what your rhythms in life are. So, this thing called time bucketing, if you're obsessed with growing your business, let's say you've got a new company, you're an entrepreneur and you're growing your business, most people say you have to be on 24/7, 365. You don't. You just have to be intensely locked in the buckets that you have, knowing that you cannot function just like an athlete. If you put them on a basketball court and say you're going to play for 10 hours today, they're going to wind down. There's a diminishing returns after a certain level. So just like an athlete, you go hard for the allotted time that you have, the obsession, and then you have to recover and rest and recharge as an obsession. So for example, if your day looked like, you got 4 hours, you're going to bucket for deep work, deep practice time. You don't have any notifications on. You don't have your phone checking text. You're not constantly checking email. You're locked in the zone for those 4 hours, whatever your time might be. And then you maybe go for a walk. You spend time with your family. You exercise. That's building your flow state type of day to be ultimately more productive, still in an obsessed manner, without the obsessive amount of hours that will drain you and burn you out.
The difference between grinding and just wearing out versus, actually having a strategic plan and channeling that obsession. I love that because I think too, of getting into the flow state, maybe tell people what your definition of the flow state is. And is that, when I think of flow state or someone that seemed to be able to get in there would be like Kobe Bryant with,
Yeah.
he talked about the Mamba mentality and reading his book of how he would get in there. Tell us your definition of the flow state. And is Kobe an example of that obsession that everything he did was around family and basketball?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think he had his priorities locked in where he knew like you can only pour into a certain amount of things. And if you've got, these 18 different things, you're probably not going to do your two things great. So, yeah, I think
Yep.
it is defining your vision and what you want. So when you think about this, when you think about, hey, what is my vision? Where do I want to be? This is a term called self-efficacy. So we talked about confidence briefly at the start. So there's three levels of this, and the ultimate level. So it's self-love is the first level, accepting, loving yourself. That's
Yep.
self-awareness. It's great.
That's huge. Yep.
Self-confidence, being able to walk into any room and be confident in the message you're going to deliver and the person that you are. And then there's self-efficacy, and I think this ties in directly with living your life in the flow. This just simply means living today as if you are the person that you want to be tomorrow. So far too often, people just get in this routine and get in this hamster wheel, and nobody ever achieved greatness just meandering their way and just landed at the top of the mountain, right?
I
Like,
love that. So everyone, he said, no one's ever achieved greatness by meandering through
yeah,
life and day to day.
totally. You have to have a vision. So what that
Yep.
vision is, and paint that picture very specifically. Now, God has a funny way of working. He'll probably make it better than you can even imagine, but you have to have a pursuit of where you want to go. So now this decides what you're going to focus your daily time on. And There's that. So ultimately, the living in the flow is a life that you enjoy living, that you wake up excited about, that you don't feel like, the weight of the world's on your shoulders, that you have great relationships, community. So it's an all encompassing, but there's ways to get into it and there's ways to avoid, falling out of it too. So the way to train it, if you want to tap into it like quickly, on the go flow, and this developed through a 2-year study that we just completed. I partnered up with some neuroscientists that have worked with Peyton Manning, Bryson DeChambeau, some of the top athletes, because I was always fascinated with it. Ed, I was like, there has to be a way to train to get into flow state. It's an area in the brain which is known as 10 hertz. Alpha zone is between 8 and 12 hertz. That's the alpha is the deep focus, the creativity. 10 hertz is what we're seeking to get to. And I, been around a lot of athletes and different people, and I was always like, well, how did you get into flow state? And nobody could tell me how. Like
They
Allison
just say it just came, or I just knew, or I just hit
yeah,
it.
yeah. Like Allison Felix is the most decorated female track athlete ever. She's like, yeah, I've been in it 3 times. I was like, well, that's specific. How'd you do it? She's like, I don't know, just happened. Like, that can't be the answer, right? So we put together this study, and based on what the neuroscientists have done in developing people closer to this flow state, the first stage of this is it's a box breathing. It's what's called meta visualization. So it's another one of those big words where I'm trying to act smart. So meta visualization, and you can do all of this in 90 seconds. Like think about it, before you're going to step on in a pressure environment, or if you're just going to step into the office and you want to be locked in. Meta visualization is box breathing. So box breathing is the 5 seconds in,
Yep.
5 seconds hold, 5 seconds out, 5 seconds hold. And what that does, it slows down the central nervous system. It makes you feel much more calm and at ease. Like if you just need a reset in the day, just breathing like that helps a ton. The meta visualization part of it is now visualizing how you want that day, how you want that activity, the outcome
The
to happen.
outcome then. Yep.
Yeah, you seeing the outcome. So I'll do it before I step on stage to speak. I'm seeing the audience going crazy. Like I've already put that as a happening because things happen twice. They happen the first in our mind, and then they actually happen. And it was one thing that Kobe and Jordan did, phenomenally well. So their mental coach, George Mumford, is a good friend of mine, taught me a lot along the journey. He said one thing they would do different than most is they would watch the game in their mind before they went out there and played it. And then they would watch it again when something crazy happened, when they were missing shots, when there was, adversity hit. So now they knew how to overcome that because in anything that we do, it doesn't go 100% perfectly as planned. That's just not life. So going back to the flow code formula, while you're box breathing, you're visualizing, meta visualization, the meditation and the visualizing in one of how you want the outcome to happen. And this can take like 30 seconds. It's really that simple and that fast. The next part is it's an autogenic mind muscle connection, another long one. That is just feeling every limb of your body. So if you're imagining that water starts at the top of your head and it goes down through your body, this is now you're activating both your right and your left hemisphere of your brain. You're feeling every part of your body. You're becoming more in touch, more locked in. That's the second step. And that's another 15, 20 seconds. And then it's what's called a gaze point. So a gaze point, like when you see athletes and they're just like staring off into space, or even when like my wife does this all the time. When she's thinking, she's a writer, producer, actor, and we'll just be walking, having conversation. I see just her eyes glaze over. I'm like, where did you go?
Where'd you go?
Where did you go? But it was a creative thought. It was a deep thought. And that's called the gaze point. So you can activate this just by locking in on one specific spot. So, I'm going back to speaking, or, if you're leading the meeting, you just lock in on one spot. There's a lot of things going on around you, but you're just locked in on one spot. You're not seeing the person in the front row texting and throwing you out of your game. You're locked in on that one spot. So we have meta visualization. That's just the box breathing with visualizing how you want the outcome to happen. The autogenic mind muscle connection. That's just feeling every part of your body, activating the right and left hemisphere. And then, as we just talked about right there, the gaze point, and then the final piece. The final piece is not that complicated. As you get it down, you can just flow through it. I promise. I know there's a lot of words in here. It's just tapping in. So the tapping in, I just tap my wrist. This is now it's a mind, body activation too of
Yep.
just it's kind of like a cue. It's a trigger. And the tap stands for trust. You are trusting that the process that you're on is going to lead you to that vision, to the goals that you have, the trust. Acceptance, you're accepting that God has you exactly where you're supposed to be right now, right here for this moment. And P is presence. You're present in the moment. You're not
In the
ruminating.
moment.
Yeah, you're not ruminating about, past the past, and you're not having anxiety about the future to come. You're in the moment. And that tap is that trigger to your mind. And it's also you're like, hey, I'm tapping in right now and it's go time. And that takes, a minute to 90 seconds right there. But like anything, you got to repeat it and you have to repeat it. And as you repeat it, that muscle memory continues to grow and continues to grow where it becomes easier and easier to get into this deeper state, this flow state.
So what's awesome about that is one for people listening is that this isn't saying take an hour to meditate, do this for 2 hours, do this. It really is something that, if you wrote it out, say these are the 4 things I need to do. And then when he said about creating the memory, the muscle memory is the tap, that will start triggering it. And you have to continue to do that. So I think that, that was awesome to me. And as you were saying that, I was thinking about, when you talked about confidence and, is it always tied to inner talent, or it sounds like this is something where you're building just calm and the confidence. Because some people are confident just because things come easy to them. You probably saw that with some of the NBA players. You're like, dude, if you would just work harder, I mean, you have so much,
Yeah.
talent. But is confidence something that can be built, or is that something that people are just innately born with?
Great. I love this question. Yeah, it can definitely be developed. Now, I believe everybody is born with different levels of attributes. So somebody might be born with more natural confidence than somebody else, but that person might be born with more natural resilience or natural empathy. So the attributes will change depending on, your upbringing, your past, how you were raised, but you can definitely develop confidence. The first part of confidence, and this might sound contradictory
Hmm.
to what confidence people might think confidence is, but the only way to have confidence is to be okay if you quote unquote fail, if you don't make the shot, if you have a terrible talk, if you don't make the sale. If you are worried about the results and if you try to force the results, it's going to be a slugfest. You won't be as confident. So I want you to imagine like Steph Curry, the greatest NBA shooter of all time. If he misses 13 shots in a row, how do you think he's going to shoot that 14th shot? Same way, right?
Same way. Yep. Same way.
Right. Because he doesn't care about the results. Not that he doesn't care about them, sorry, he doesn't let those define his process. The outcome doesn't define the process. So when you can step out of that and you can think of like, okay, I'm just doing the thing, like we talked about Alex did, without worried about what that thing will produce, then you will ultimately have more confidence in that. Because if you were giving a talk in front of 10,000 people and you really did not care how it went or what the reviews were or what if you'd book another talk or if what your speaking agents would think, if you didn't care about any of that, you'd do much better because now you're putting this pressure on yourself that you have to perform, you have to produce. So that's the first stage of it. Now, the second stage is you have to do the thing and you have to do the thing in the actual environment that that thing
In
is.
the arena.
You
Yep.
have to do it in the arena. But it doesn't have to be the same arena. So what I mean by that is, and I'm using speaking as a lot because I know you guys have speakers and leaders and coaches and communication is everything as we know. But so for example, when I became a keynote speaker, I had never talked on stage before. But I also knew that I had done basketball camps where I talked for 5 hours the entire day and held captivated kids as my audience, which if you can captivate
It's
kids,
not easy to do.
captivate anybody. So I looked at that and I was like, man, you know what? It's not that different. It's just a transferable skill that now I'm going to use in a different way. So as you develop in the arena can be a different arena for something else. So if you're working on, if you're trying to become the best salesperson there is, you might be convincing your kids, or you might be convincing your parents, or you might work in that kind of persuasion aspect in just normal conversations that you're in. You're developing a skill, even if you haven't done it in the arena, then you become more prepared for that arena. So
Yeah, it
those,
makes me think. No, that's helpful. It makes me think of one of our previous guest, Dan Houston, former CEO and chairman of the board at Principal, was not a huge fan of, the management degrees that you can get from colleges because he said if you're not in the arena, if you're not learning, I mean, you can see theories in books, but until you go through it or you see others and you're watching them, that it isn't the same. And it's funny when you talking about Steph Curry. I was going to ask you who was the most talented, least confident person? Like you're like, dude, you are way better than what you realize. Does anyone come to mind as the most talented, least confident? And then I wrote this down too. I thought, well, that's kind of interesting because you always also have these people go, man, I can't believe I got cut when such and such. Like, dude, you weren't that good. So who is the least talented, most confident person?
well, I think the most talented, least confident person that I've worked with was Brooke Lopez. Brooke
Mm,
Lopez has gone on to have a fantastic NBA career, and he's still playing. He's probably 15 years plus. When I got out to Brooklyn, he was basically relegated to being a post player, and you look at him, he's 7 foot and he's a wide
yep.
body. You're like, you probably should be in the post. But his real skill set was actually shooting threes, and this was kind of
Threes.
before.
Yep.
Yeah, this was kind of before the NBA moved everybody to the 3-point line. But, he just really wasn't confident in his game because he wasn't in his best situation. So think about that. There's this, and I'll butcher this quote, but it's by Einstein. He's like, if you tell a goldfish to climb up a wall its whole life, it'll spend its whole life thinking it's really dumb because that's not what goldfish do. So Brooke wasn't in his strength zone. They thought it
Of
was.
being post up, down low, and yep.
No, because he looked like he should be that, but in reality, his strength was somewhere else. So that's a big thing that we developed and we worked on is let's find his strength, let's double down on his strength, and at some point, some coach is going to come along and they're going to realize, oh man, you have a lot of value stretching the floor instead of just being in the post. So by being in that, where he felt more confident in his abilities, he became more confident overall.
No, that's interesting. And then who was the least talented, most confident person?
Oh man, there's a lot of those guys. There's a lot of those guys that I've seen. Well, I do think I'll tell this. I like this story. It's kind of along those lines, but a little bit different. So I did a lot of NBA pre-draft, and this is where the
Okay, yep.
guys coming out of college, they were preparing for the NBA. And this was 2018. I had this kid, he was a freshman from Kentucky. He walked in the gym. He had this big smile on his face from ear to ear. Nobody knew who this guy was. He was like, maybe a late first round pick. And I would always ask these guys what their goals are. Like, I wanted to see, like we're talking about, what their vision is. What do they see for their career? And most would say, well, I want to be an all star or I want to be a first round draft pick. This kid said, I want to be the best player in the world. Like cold, just straight, smile on his face, wasn't joking. I was like, whoa, what? You do realize like you're coming into a league with LeBron, KD, Curry.
Uh,
Yeah, I'll be the best player in the world. So the very first workout, we try to just crush them. We try to test their souls basically. So we're putting them
yep.
through it. Like guys are, just dumb drills that probably don't even make sense for basketball. But, guys are like, hands on the hips. They're They're trying to get done with this workout. So when we finished, everybody went to the locker room. But this kid, he came up to me and he's like, "Hey, when are we going tonight?" And I was like, "What? This guy's different. Like he really wants." I was like, "You sure?" He's like, "Yeah, there's some footwork things that I want to master." So we did the normal workout and then every night going again, working on the footwork, just this deep practice like we were talking about. He wanted to master every single drill and every skill. And there was one other player that I ever heard did this same thing back in the day in pre-draft workouts, and it was Kobe Bryant. He did the
I was
same,
just going to say Kobe Bryant, I bet.
mastered the footwork and the fundamentals. This player that I'm talking about is Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, who, if
Are
people
you
don't know,
serious?
is the MVP and the best player in the world. So he went from nobody knew about him, but the way he prepared, the way he practiced every single day, and that confident mentality of, and he'll talk about it too. He'll be like, I just thought about it. It's like, somebody has to be the best player in the world. Why can't it be me? And I was like, I love that outlook. Like, why not? Someone's got to do it.
That's interesting. And a client of ours, his son's in the uh, is it G or D League, whichever one they call it now, with the Oklahoma City Thunder, and he said Shea could not be any nicer to his son, and just the way he carries himself. And so when you said walking in with the big smile, and then you told me who it was, just he's in his flow state. He's happy, he's confident,
Yep.
but he's going to work to get to that state of potentially the greatest in the game, and he is the MVP now. And now it's what's the next level for someone like that.
Totally. Wait, is that Peyton Sanford?
It is Peyton that is
Hey,
there. So
I love Peyton. Hey, that kid is going to be an NBA player for a long time. You know why?
that's what we're hoping. He's got to get past some of the surgeries that he had post Iowa, and then this is good. Now I'm a Nebraska fan, so we've been watching his brother
Brothers and sisters.
Price as well too, and incredibly quick release on that side. So it's always fun when you watch kids that and see some of the joy and happiness. And I'd be curious, because you're speaking now, or more of your talks is to the corporations, and you gave a little bit of example of some of the new studies that's coming out and an easy thing. But when you're talking to business leaders, whether it's the C-level team, how are you talking to them about helping their team members up and coming get into the flow state? And maybe even as you were talking about interviewing Shea and others, is there certain traits that the CEOs and C-level executives should be looking at or looking for in this group coming up now?
Yeah, totally. So the number one thing, like when I talk to corporations or consult for companies, is how to get your team into the flow. So individual flow is fantastic, and we talk about that. And a lot of it's kind of what we've been hitting on here is, confidence, the deep practice, the way to get in there, on call, and the way to get back in the zone, because everybody will fall out of it. You'll go into a funk, you'll go into whatever, a shooter slump, is to get out of your own way and serve. How can you serve somebody else? I know people know that. It's not really like something that's crazy or new. It's hard to do. It's hard to think about in the moment. So that's, to get back into the zone, kind of just die to yourself to serve others. But the main one is how to get your team into the zone. And
Mm.
the number one thing that, kills relationships, it kills sports teams, it kills, rock bands. I joke when I say this. I say the number one thing, and I pause for a second. I say, "Well, it's the Kardashians. They kill all of those." But it's not that. It's communication. It's communication, right? And it sounds basic, and it's called a soft skill, but it's anything but soft. The way to get your team into the zone is to master the art of communication, the rhythms of communication, the alignment, the clarity of communication, the ability to have difficult conversations, how to open up rooms where you're able to have what I call an elephant in the room conversation, where you're going to say, "Hey, like this is an elephant in the room conversation." So it takes off the awkwardness. You're like, "Okay, yep, I accept that. What's on your heart?" So the thing that I did with this company I started consulting for about 3.5 years ago, they're the communication wires were all over the place, and we just set in a non-negotiables. What the non-negotiables literally mean is you can't negotiate with us. These are the three things we are going to make sure we hit every single time we communicate with each other, every single
Hmm.
time we meet, every single hire we make, every way that we run offsites, everything, how we deal with the board, the non-negotiables. Their number one in the non-negotiable was no ego. And that's it hasn't changed. They have not hired anybody. They cleaned house on people that came in with an ego. Who is it about? Is it about you or is it about the
Or it's
team?
about the team. Yep.
And I know it sounds basic, but you know it. You've seen it. I've seen it at every, ego will kill everything. The second one is, are you coachable? And this goes for the CEO as well. Are you coachable? Are you willing to take feedback? Are you willing to give feedback in a way that, and I think this is one of the greatest shifts that if people can fully understand this, is work and the person that you are separated. They're not the same. So when somebody comes at you and like, hey, you did terrible, like, it wasn't good in this, they're not attacking you as a human. It's just the work that you are doing. It has no reflection on you as a human. It's separating those. So the ability to take feedback and give feedback and being
Hmm.
coachable was number two.
Yep.
And then finally, number three was same mission, same vision. And
Yep.
with many different branches of a company, sales or product, marketing, are you for that silo or are you for the team as a whole? And when you can get those three things, which might sound like, oh yeah, that's a walk in the park. It's not. It's very hard. It's always changing. You always have to go back and check on it. You always have to make sure that it's in a good spot. But if you can get those three non-negotiables, your team will be able to operate in flow. Because going back to the Navy SEALs example that you gave, think about that. Do they have all those three? Absolutely.
100%.
And they know where everybody's going to be and they trust everybody in their role. If they didn't, they'd probably get shot. So think about that. Do you trust everybody in their role and empower them in their role as well?
God, what I love there, and I was writing notes down. So when I was looking down, when you said non-ego, two things popped in my head. First, once you just mentioned my friend, I heard him say in a talk once, do extraordinary things without expectation of recognition.
Oh, that's good.
And I thought, that I was like, that is like one of the coolest things I heard. My business partner always says humble and hungry,
Hmm.
and he exudes that. And then the one that I've loved, maybe tied to your talk, but it's what I've always thought of that someone that is confidently humble. So you're confident in your abilities. When someone's confident, there is a certain way you walk, a certain way you carry yourself,
Hmm.
but you're humble enough to know I don't have all the answers, or you're always in continuous learning state. So when you mentioned about Kobe, I remember reading in that art, it was either article or book, like he'd watch, a rookie on the team, or he just watched something where a guy had a move that he had not mastered yet.
Yep.
And it could have been someone like me that had maybe one move, but he's like, well, I want to
Yep.
master that. Oh, he got that shot up over that person. That's interesting how he did that. And he'd work on it and he'd work on it. That's someone that's confidently humble. I can always get better. So, I do love that. And then when you said the elephant in the room, on one of our previous podcasts too, someone had mentioned they actually have an elephant, stuffed elephant. And so they'll put it right on their desk when they're having that conversation. Like, okay,
That's
the
great.
elephant's out of the drawer. It's in the room, and here's what we need to discuss. So I love that the non-ego, the same vision on there, and then the coachable that you probably found, and maybe this will be where you can end. So many people that didn't make the NBA that had the talent or didn't last as long as they could have
Hmm.
because of not being coachable. Is that what you found? And then you found some people that always just you're like, man, that guy's got a 10-year career now. How? And
Hmm.
probably part of it was everything that you just mentioned there. Would that be accurate?
Spot on, spot on. So I'll give you the example. I mean, we already used Shea, who's very coachable, and the best players and the best people, they are coachable. They want coaches because
Mm-hmm.
whether it's a 1% or a 0.1%, they're always looking to learn and grow. So there was a player, Josh Jackson. He was, I think, the number 3 pick out of Kansas 6 or
Yeah.
7 years ago, and he was just not coachable at all. He showed up like at the gym, like he didn't want to be there. I had to drag him to the gym, and just like everything you would think of, like just had all the tools, talented as could be, but not coachable. Didn't want to work. Out of the league in 3 years. Nobody knows about him anymore. No one knows if he's still playing, but had this that great opportunity had he been coachable. The flip side, Duncan Robinson, very good friend of mine. He's a D3 player. Got his opportunity, and Spoelstra, who I've worked a lot with, the Miami Heat coach, just said he's the most coachable guy. Anything he told him to do, he would do. Even if it was like you need to come off the bench, and sometimes he'd go in the lineup, out of the lineup, but he'd always be ready every time he stepped on the floor because he didn't look at it as like, hey, I deserve all this, but I'm going to earn it, and I'm going to listen to the wise, and I'm going to listen to great coaches. So, yeah, I think and that's one of the reasons I was telling you, like, Peyton Sanford will be an NBA player. He's super coachable. He's got extreme grit and toughness and tenacity, and he's got a high level elite skill to shoot it. And if you have those three things, you can play in the NBA for a long time.
That's awesome. I think I had two of the three. I was missing the elite skill, on that.
That's good, man. Yeah. You know what? Okay, you also need some height too. Sorry. I was
Yeah,
missing.
you need height. You need that jumper. You need you need something. But what I love about that last part for everyone that's listening here, think about that if you're watching like the start of a pickup basketball game or just warm ups or people at a shoot around, Duncan versus Josh, and you'd be like, okay, which one's the NBA player? You'd gravitate towards the one, but in reality, it's the one that now, will end up having an 8-10 year career, which is just incredible. So, well, David, as always, this has been awesome. For those of you that are listening, we're going to be putting the links to just David's website. He has his own podcast, The Doctor and the Nurse, because his last name's Nurse, and brings on a lot of people with these, just neuroscience things or health or eating and all those different things. He's a great follow on all the different channels, so we'll make sure that that's in there. And wanted to thank you for being on today. And, that's all for now. We appreciate everyone joining this episode. For those of you that are with us, if you can comment, pass it on. We're just getting so much momentum here. And just wanted to say this is Ed McGill, host of the podcast, Led Leadership with Ed, signing off with the great David Nurse. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you so much.